The first snow of December fell the same night Daniel Mercer realized he had only $43 left in his checking account, and the weight of that number pressed against his chest harder than the winter air. He stood in the narrow kitchen of their small apartment, lights off to save electricity, watching snow gather on the fire escape outside, knowing Christmas was only days away, and that he had nothing to give his daughter but an apology he didn't know how to say. Before the story continues, take a moment and ask yourself this: do you believe small acts of kindness can change a life, or even the world? If you do, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about second chances and the quiet power of love. Daniel had not always been poor. There was a time when his hands built things people admired, when his name was signed on steady paychecks and his daughter Emily never worried about tomorrow. That life ended 2 years earlier, the same year Emily's mother died suddenly from an illness no one saw coming. Grief hollowed Daniel out, and bills followed like shadows. Medical expenses drained savings, time off work turned into lost contracts. Eventually, the workshop closed its doors to him, and the man who once fixed other people's problems found himself unable to fix his own. Now he worked nights cleaning offices downtown, a job that paid just enough to keep the lights on most months. He slept when Emily was at school and woke up in time to make her dinner, simple meals stretched across days. Emily was 8 years old, bright-eyed, thoughtful beyond her years, and far too observant for Daniel's comfort. She noticed the grocery lists growing shorter. She noticed the way he studied price tags longer than he used to. She noticed, most painfully, how the calendar circled December in red ink, and how Daniel avoided looking at it. The apartment smelled faintly of detergent and old pine from a small artificial tree Daniel had rescued from a dumpster behind a closed thrift store the year before. He had fixed one broken branch with tape and tied a string of mismatched lights around it. Only half of them worked, but Emily loved it anyway. She sat cross-legged on the floor each evening, coloring pictures of snowmen and stars, humming softly, pretending everything was normal. Daniel told himself he would figure something out. He always did. But each night, after Emily fell asleep clutching her worn stuffed rabbit, he sat at the small table with unpaid bills spread out like accusations. Rent, utilities, school supplies. There was no space for toys, no room for magic. He imagined Emily waking on Christmas morning to an empty space beneath the tree, and the thought cut deeper than hunger ever had. Emily never asked for much. She had learned that early. Instead, she watched other children talk about presents and trips and treats, with a quiet smile that broke Daniel's heart. One afternoon, as he tied his boots for work, he noticed Emily at the table, carefully folding a piece of paper, concentrating as if it were the most important task in the world. He didn't ask what it was. He was afraid of the answer. That night, after she went to bed, Daniel found the folded paper slipped into an envelope addressed in careful, uneven letters. It was a letter to Santa. His first instinct was to put it back, untouched, to preserve whatever innocence it carried, but something compelled him to open it. Maybe because the weight of failure already felt unbearable, and he needed to know exactly what he was failing to provide. Emily's letter wasn't long. There were no lists of toys, no brand names copied from commercials. She wrote about school, about how she helped a new girl feel less lonely, about how she and her dad made pancakes on Sundays even when they were tired. She told Santa that her dad worked very hard and sometimes looked sad, and that she wished he would smile more. She asked Santa to please take care of her dad because he was doing his best. At the end, she asked for one small thing, a warm coat for her dad, because his was old and the winter was cold. Daniel sank into the chair, the letter shaking in his hands, and cried the kind of tears that come from loving someone more than you love yourself. His daughter, who had so little, had used her Christmas wish on him. The next day, Emily carefully placed the envelope on the windowsill, believing, as children do, that magic still found a way. Daniel went to work with the letter folded in his pocket, its words echoing in his mind as he wiped desks and emptied trash cans in silent office buildings glowing with holiday lights. He wondered how many people walked past him each day, unaware of the small miracles unfolding quietly around them, unnoticed and unrecorded. 2 days before Christmas, something unexpected happened. When Daniel returned home after a long shift, he noticed the apartment hallway buzzing with unusual energy. Neighbors he barely knew stood talking in hushed, excited voices. Someone had taped a handwritten note to the building's notice board. Daniel read it twice before it made sense. It was about a letter found at the local post office, a child's letter addressed to Santa, dropped accidentally near the mailboxes. A postal worker had shared it anonymously online, moved by its kindness. The message had spread faster than anyone expected. Daniel's stomach dropped. He knew instantly it was Emily's letter. Panic rose first, then embarrassment, then fear. He worried people would pity them, judge him, see him as a failure. He unlocked the apartment door with shaking hands, unsure what waited inside. What he found stopped him cold. The small living room glowed softly, brighter than it ever had. Under the crooked little tree sat wrapped boxes, more than Daniel could count. A new winter coat lay folded neatly on the chair, thick and warm, with a simple tag. That read, "For a good dad." On the table were grocery bags filled to the top, fresh food and treats they hadn't had in months. There was an envelope with Daniel's name, inside of which was a note explaining that rent for the next 3 months had been quietly taken care of by people who believed in Emily's Christmas wish. Emily stood in the middle of it all, eyes wide with wonder, hands pressed to her mouth, trying to understand how the world had suddenly grown so generous. Daniel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by gratitude and disbelief. Feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time settle into his chest. Hope. The story spread through the building and beyond, but Daniel never learned all the names behind the gifts. There were neighbors who had slipped toys under the tree after reading the note. There was the postal worker who had shared the letter not for attention but because it reminded them why they took pride in their job. There were strangers who saw themselves in a single father trying to hold everything together, and in a little girl whose kindness reached beyond her own needs. Christmas morning arrived quietly, snow blanketing the city in soft white silence. Daniel woke early, not from worry this time, but from a sense of peace he barely recognized. Emily ran to the tree, laughter filling the room as she discovered books, art supplies, warm clothes, and one small stuffed reindeer she hugged immediately. Daniel watched her, heart full, knowing none of this erased their struggles completely, but it changed something deeper. It reminded him they were not invisible. As the days passed, Daniel noticed subtle shifts within himself. He stood a little straighter. He smiled more easily. He applied for better jobs with renewed confidence. He volunteered to help others in the building, fixing small things, offering what skills he had. Emily noticed too. She drew pictures of people holding hands, of snow falling gently on houses with lights glowing inside. Life didn't become perfect overnight. Bills still came. Work was still hard. But the fear that once dominated Daniel's thoughts loosened its grip. He understood now that asking for help was not weakness, and that love, when shared freely, multiplied in ways money never could. Before this story ends, if Emily's letter and Daniel's journey touched something inside you, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement helps these stories reach others who may be standing in quiet kitchens, wondering how they'll make it through another winter. And just before the ending, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with a single word that represents what this story made you feel, whether it's hope, gratitude, kindness, or faith. Your words matter more than you know. Years later, Daniel would keep Emily's letter folded carefully in a drawer, worn at the edges from being read on hard days. Not because of what it brought them that Christmas, but because of what it taught them both. That generosity doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives as a child's quiet wish, written in uneven letters, asking the world to be gentle with someone she loves. And sometimes, when the world listens, everything changes.